our first speaker is going to be Mr. Ganapathi Ramachandran, who is the chairman of the Trigen Technologies Limited, a company with a turnover of over $130 million and a workforce of over 3,000 technical professionals across the globe. Now, apart from all the work that he does, he has a very deep connect. His company has a deep connect with the vaccine shots that all of us have taken, because Trigen is also the creator of the CoWIN app. So if you have compliments for the CoWIN app, you know who to thank. He's also the past president of SICI, the South Indian Chamber of Commerce and Industry. He's on the board of several companies. The list is endless. He's an alumni of IIT Madras, rank holder number 10, I must tell you. And he works closely in the field of education, has a great interest in the world of politics, policy making and governance issues, and is involved with several philanthropic activities. So today he will, over the course of the next few minutes, he will give us an overview of the budget. And Mr. Ganapathi is also a very keen golfer and cricket lover, so he'll be able to tell you whether the budget hit more or missed more. Mr. Ganapathi.
Thank you, Sudhir, for that very generous introduction. And I think it's a high privilege and honor for any professional to be part of the next generation, which is coming to take over the leadership in the country, particularly in the administration. And as one of the earlier speakers said, out of this group could well be many people who will draft some budgets for the country going forward. But having said that, I've always consistently maintained the budget creates this kind of excitement only in India. Anywhere else, it's a normal happening day. And where it all started, the mother of all budgets was possibly in the House of Commons in UK. And when the Chancellor of Exchequer presents his budget, he doesn't get this kind of television audience. He doesn't get this kind of optics. A mission like Chinmaya may not sit and get students to understand the budget. It's just a statement of accounts, which in very simple terms is what my mother used to give it to my father on on the first day of every month for almost 40 years. So I think, but then India is India. We have our own compulsions to make things exciting for ourselves. And because in my opinion, the government doesn't work only on 1 February. I think the government works for 365 days. And things change as it goes along. The entire assumption of a budget can change with one failed monsoon. But having said that, to any finance minister or even a mother at home who manages the finances, balancing a budget is always a challenge. And now look at it, balancing a budget for a huge nation like India with many varied priorities is never easy. The budget 2022, in my opinion, unleashes another dose of optimism in a period when the pandemic clouds have not yet blown over. There are still huge headwinds, and I see no early signs of tailwinds with the kind of huge supply side issues that we have, and speakers coming after me will highlight on some of these things. It now boils down to effectiveness and execution and implementation, which has always been, in my opinion, the trickle-down effect, which is so vital in delivering, has been India's concern. But then must compliment the finance minister. This is the 4th budget. Not many finance ministers in the country have delivered these many budgets. It's measure of her, the government's, the prime minister's confidence in her ability to manage finance. Particularly, the 2 years have been very, very difficult. India, as we all know, went into this from a historical low for various reasons, where the rest of the world went into this pandemic from a historical high. But coming out of it, we are creating for ourselves an opportunity to straighten out a few things. This is what I like to call this is primarily an expenditure budget. Higher public and capital expenditure to an extent of 35% of plus on the infrastructure projects is expected to bring in private investments. Let me tell you what this is typically a Keynesian method of, many of you may be economics students who know about John Maynard Keynes. This is a Keynesian approach, spend your way out of trouble. In a very simple term, T.S. Sudhir is one of India's earliest cricket commentators. He'll agree with me. when in trouble, the batsman is told, hit your way out of trouble. Or when you're out of form, as Sachin Tendulkar hits his way out of a few good shots and you're through. This is something like that. You're in that kind of a situation where you spend your way out of trouble. In fact, this was visible when Margaret Thatcher was leader in UK, Ronald Reagan bringing reviving the US economy in the early 80s. They all spent their way out of troubles. And one of the best things they found was creating infrastructure. And infrastructure on top of that list were always roads. So much so in the US, they said Reagan built roads from nowhere to nowhere. He just laid roads. But I think the impact of all that, you see Biden going in with a multi-trillion-dollar booster shot for the economy. And this again is infrastructure. Globally, when in trouble, when you're coming out of recession, and I think what we see, and I'm sure successive speakers will highlight on this, we are coming out of a low growth, high inflation, or almost zero growth, high inflation, which the pundits will call as stagflation. When you come out of that, I think this is a great booster dose. And one of the best ways of doing it is roads, as I said, because in India is essentially a cash economy. And across every spectrum of road development, you are using cash. You're using aggregate you buy using cash, sand you buy using cash, water you buy using cash, labor you pay using cash, and more importantly, tolls are also not now perhaps, but to even now to some extent is taken by cash. This will ensure that one aspect of the economy that has not been in play in recent times will come back into play, and that will be the booster dose for the Indian economy. There are many good things which will come out in the course of the discussion by the panel. There are, as Mr. Sudhir said, a few hits, a few misses, a few snicks which could have been avoided. But I think net, I would call this a BSNL budget. I was on a trek once many years ago, a legal approved trek in Mudumalai, went deep into the forest. These were early days of mobility. And deep into the forest, somebody's phone rang. And at a time when we had Airtel, Skycell, Aircell, and a few others in play, this phone rang and I was intrigued. I asked him, how did you get this? He says, no, sir, this is BSNL, sir, inga tower iruku. So then I realized BSNL is pretty unique. BSNL has connectivity everywhere, but not enough. Therefore, this is a budget where there's something for everybody, but perhaps there isn't everything for everybody. And that's why governments are always either criticized, supported, or not. But having said all that, I never want to rank a budget. We industrialists publicly would say 12 on 10 for any budget. And this I heard it from one of India's globe's top emerging market experts. He said he stopped coming on television shows because on the budget, and industrialists like Mike Muralidharan or me rated it as 12 on 10. But when they went for a commercial break, he said this is the worst budget. But here I would publicly like to say, this is a budget where you're playing on a rain-affected wicket, facing possibly T.S. Sudhir's favorite bowler of those days, Derek Underwood, but you're hitting your way out of trouble. I think you have to be patient. I think you have to be calm. Give this budget a chance to play, and I think this should help India, if played well, come out of this crisis sooner than perhaps later. With these comments, I thank Chinmaya for helping me to share some of my thoughts on this budget, and over to you, T.S.